Energy calculations for your home. How confusing can they be? We're going to be talking in this video today about the different types of energy calculations and codes that are out there and what you can do to get ahead of the game. Stay tuned. Here we go. If you like what we're talking about today, don't forget to click that subscribe button. Go ahead and give us that thumbs up, and also click the notifications button and select the bell at the top that says all. This way you'll be notified of any videos that we have up and coming. Energy calculations on your home. Well, why do we need energy calculations in our home? Well, in a lot of states, when you're building a new house, they want to make sure that the materials that you're using are energy efficient enough to meet that individual state's codes at that time. Now, some states are different. Some adopt a much newer type of code with much higher energy values that are required. And some states are a little more lenient, and some states really don't have them at all. And we're going to show you later on where you can go to find out what and where those codes are. But in these videos, we're going to be talking about two of the biggest energy calculation or codes that are out there that we use when you're building a new house or when you're renovating a home as well. Now, there's a couple things that when you're renovating a home, we just kind of have a couple rules of thumb. Now, there's obviously, with everything in the government, there's a lot more complexity to it. But two of the biggest reasons when you're renovating a home, which would require you to have energy calculations done, is one, in the state of Florida, and a lot of the states adopt very similar, so you need to check with your individual state. But in Florida, the two biggest ones that our team looks out for is if the renovation being done on the home, the cost of the renovation, is greater than 30% of the assessed value of the home. Now, the assessed value, not the inflated real estate market value, the property appraiser's assessed value that you'll see on the website. So you have to take those. And if it's greater than 30%, it's a good chance you're going to need an energy calculation done on the home. The other one is, some of the building officials call this the FEMA code. But what that is if you are renovating greater than 50% of the square footage of the home, you're going to need an energy calculation. Now, when you talk about renovation, they're not talking about, you're just going to be changing the linoleum to a wood floor. No. Major renovations. You're busting out walls, you're changing windows, you're taking exterior doors and exterior walls and things like that. Now, these are just guidelines. It's always best to get with your local building officials and find out exactly. Don't always just trust the architect. Don't always just trust your builder. Don't always just trust your air conditioning company, because we deal with all of them. And there's a lot of times that none of those people that come to us really understand that they do or don't need an energy calculation. So it's always important to contact your local building department. Be very clear with what you're doing to the house and let them let you know whether you are going to need an energy calculation. Now be very careful, because a lot of building departments, they encompass energy calculation to also include load calculations, which determines the size of the air conditioning system that's going to be in the house. And there are some instances where you're going to need a new load calculation as well. So you have to be very clear and dig into that question, because a lot of times they'll say energy calculations, and in their mind, they're including load calcs and maybe manual deduct designs and things of that nature. So you really need to ask them that question. Now, if you come to ProCalcs and you have ProCalcs do it, we're going to help you find out that information, because codes are always changing. Building departments are always changing ideas and thoughts. And believe it or not, in Florida, they all read out of the same book. But we do work in just about every single county in the state of Florida, and there is pretty much not one of them that reads the book the same exact way and interprets the codes the exact same way. So you have to be careful and make sure that you contact your local department. So the two big code calculations that we're going to talk about today, and there are other ones, is the prescriptive method and the performance method. Now, today we're going to focus on the prescriptive method because the prescriptive method seems to be adopted by a lot more states than the performance method. Now, in Florida, we do have the prescriptive method. We do have the performance method. Those are the two that are used. And in Florida, probably 99% of every house that we focus on, we use the performance method because they'll never pass in the prescriptive method. And we'll show you why here in a little bit. So those are the two. In the next video we're going to have coming out to you is going to talk about the performance method in detail. And then we're going to have another video that actually talks about the different software that can be used to provide the energy calculations. And one of them is a free software and is actually open to the public. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to have any special licenses. You can just go right on the website, and we're going to show you that when we get to that video. But today we're going to be focusing on the prescriptive method. Okay, so here is the prescriptive method of energy calculation. Now, these numbers that you see are 402. That's actually a section in the building code, and we're going to show you that in a little bit. But here's the form that gets completed when we're doing a prescriptive energy calculation on a home. Now, this front part, obviously, we're in Florida. I'm going to use the Florida code, energy conservation for Form 402. This is the part that gets filled out here. Okay, Form 402. And we use the software. Now, this prescriptive method could technically be done by hand, but you would have to do all the calculations behind the scene. But there's a lot of software, different softwares that we use that once we do the calculations, automatically puts all the information in the proper spaces. So this is the part section here that gets filled out, and we sign this, and the owner agent signs it. But here are what the requirements are. And here's the important thing, the difference between the prescriptive method and the performance method. Now, what they have is what they call, not the test houses, but they have a reference house. So virtually they have this reference house that has all of these individual items that you see here that must be met in order to pass the energy calculation. Now, with the prescriptive method, each individual item stands alone. So, as you can see here for the windows, you see we have a climate zone 1 and a climate zone 2. Okay? Now, climate zones are what dictate where and what the code for you are going to be listed as. And we see that here. Let me make sure I find my right page. So here's the climate zone map. And you can Google this and you can see it right here. So we have climate zone 1 that's down here. And that also includes Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. And we have climate zone 2 at this little section all the way over here. Climate zone 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way, continue all the way forward. You can see here, climate zone 7 is all of Alaska, except for the following zones, which is climate zone 8, if you live in any of those locations. Now, what those do, let's get back to our, there we go. So what those are going to do is they're going to dictate. And when I show you later what website you can go to find these things, that'll help you to better understand. So you can see here for climate zone 1, climate zone 2. So when we're looking at the windows, if you watch one of our previous videos, we talked about the U factor and the SHGC, which is the solar heat gain coefficient. And you can see here in climate zone 1, they don't really care about the U factor. And why? Well, the U factor, as we talked about in one of our previous videos, is more of the insulation value from allowing how fast the heat goes in or out of the thing. And when we're in the warmer climates, we're not as much as concerned about that. We're more concerned about the solar heat gain because we're closer to the sun. As you can see here in climate zone 1, which is way down at the bottom, we don't really care about that. But we do care about the solar heat gain coefficient. So when we look at these things, and you can pull these up and you can actually Google it and see Form 402. And when I show you the website here, there's the table. All this stuff is on tables, very easily free for you to access. But in the prescriptive method, the code says that if the window does not meet these specific values or lower, better insulation, and in this case, the U factors and SHGCs, the lower the numbers, the more efficient. So this 0.4 here, if it was a 0.3, it's more efficient. SHGC, it says 0.25 here. If it was a 0.20, that's more efficient. So can kind of trick people with the number. Well, wait a minute, isn't a higher number better? No, higher number in these is worse. Unlike insulation, if I come here to insulation, the R value of that insulation, the higher that number, the better. And so with the prescriptive method, the prescriptive method is very similar in every state. They might have higher or lower values, but the concept is the same. You must meet. So for your windows, they must meet these values or the whole house fails. For the floors, doors, let's say floors, if they're over unconditioned space, so if this is over a garage or an unconditioned basement, they must meet these factors. R13 in the floor or better. If it's R11 and it needs to have R13, the house, not just this component, the whole entire house fails energy calculations. Wow, that's strict. And in a lot of states, this is your only option. You have to follow it or you fail, and you're not going to be allowed to build your house. Now, some HVAC design companies out there will not ask you for a lot of information. They'll go with just some basic things. You're not really paying attention. You go and build your house, and well, you might get your permit at the beginning and you think everything's all hunky-dory and it's going away, and you build the house and everything's going, and then the inspector comes out and starts looking at the energy calculations when you get close to the CO and goes, well, wait a minute, hold on. Well, your energy calculations say that you need R13 and you only put R11 in. Can't do it. Well, what are you going to do? You've already built this structure. You already got the walls up. You already got all these things done, and you only put R11. You're going to have to go back and make a big change because it's not going to pass with R13 or with R11. You have to have R13. So it's very important that the HVAC design company that you're using, and I strongly recommend you use a third party. Do not use your HVAC company because they're not always as up on the codes and the changes and the values. And I know this because we deal with a lot of HVAC companies at ProCalcs, and many of them have no clue. I'm not saying there's not some out there that are really well versed, but many of them do not have a clue as to what goes into this. So when we're looking at these values, your frame walls versus your mass walls would be like a block wall. Then obviously the frame wall, 2x4, 2x6, 2x8. And these values must be met. And this is a big one here in Florida, is this R6 for your block walls. Now, if the insulation's on the interior, which in Florida, it's always on the interior. I don't think I've ever seen a house where all the insulation is on the exterior. But notice here, if the insulation is on the interior of the block wall, you have to have R6. Now, here's something that you really have to be careful about, and we run into this constantly. In fact, the team teases me here at ProCalcs because I constantly do training videos on clients putting on their form that we ask them to fill out that their block walls are R7. And our team would just take that and they would word of mouth and go, okay, so you're saying your block walls are R7. Yes, block walls are R7. Well, then what happens is we do the design, we put it at R7, the building inspector goes out there and it doesn't match what's actually at the home. And here's the reason why, is because in the contractor's mind, the HVAC contractor, the builder, in their mind, they're thinking R7, R6 is the whole wall structural value. That is not the case. When it comes to energy calculations, all of that stuff, all the basic building component values are already factored in. What the building department is requesting is what is the additional insulation that is being added. So if I have a block wall and I have a little bit of sheathing on the outside, I have the block wall, I have fairing strips, I have drywall, I have air gaps, that all does have an R value to it. But that's not what they care about. They want to know, are you adding an additional R6 of insulation to that block wall? Okay, which, depending on the type of insulation you use, that could be a 1-inch fiberboard, it could be a spray foam, it could be a regular bat insulation, it could be different things. But if that is not an R6 value, with the prescriptive method, it fails. Okay, so that's the tough part about the prescriptive method. Now, let's go over and show you here where we're going to find the different codes for your state. And they're all free. They're right online. And let's go over here to, we're going to go to this screen right here. So here is the website that you're going to go to, codes.iccsafe.org. And what you want to do is come here on location, and you're going to click, and you're going to find your state. So let's go ahead and go to Florida. Okay. So now when we go to Florida, it brought us up here. You're going to see all the individual different building codes. And let's scroll up here so you can see one behind my fat head here. So you're going to see all the different ones. You're going to see the main building code. You're going to see for residential, protocols, high velocity, accessibility, all different things. But the one we want to focus on is the energy conservation. Now, in just about every state, let's click on Alabama here. You're going to look a little different, okay? But they're all going to have that term energy conservation in it. All right, so let's go back to Florida. And it's going to show us. Now, what you could do here is you can filter. Now, you have to check this. What's my current adoption? There we go. So we know that we have the right ones. So we're going to want to go to the energy conservation one. Now, notice it says current adoption, but when I go back here, it gives me an option for 2020. Maybe that's a fluke on their website. So let's go back here. So energy conservation. This is the one that we focus on when we're doing energy calculations. And over here on the left side, we want to focus on, and you can see here we have commercial general requirements. You want to scroll down till you get to this Chapter 4, Residential Energy Efficiency. We're going to click on that. If you don't like to read this stuff, it's probably going to be boring read. But the key things, it's definitely recommended if you're going to buy a new house or build a house or renovate your house, you as the owner should really look into this. They say that knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't power. It's knowing what to do with that knowledge that is true power. And we tend to think that because somebody's got a fancy name badge on or a uniform or a license on the truck, we tend to think that, well, they know what they're talking about. I don't. But I guess we can kind of call that ignorance, because if we blindly follow somebody just because they have a title or a license without doing our due diligence, shame on us. The information is out there. And I would venture to say that most of the professionals that you may deal with aren't quite as professional as you think. So CYA, So when we go down this here, you're going to have tables. So here's our first table. When we talked about, we showed you on the back of that prescriptive method, we were showing you the SHGC for the windows and the U factor and different things. Well, here it is right here. Here is the actual code that you would go to. Here's all the different climate zones. Now, even though this is Florida, they're still pointing out the climate zones because a lot of these tables and a lot of these codes are the same throughout the states that adopt the prescriptive method. They may have some different wording and tweak some things here and there, but overall they're the same. But this is a great place when you're going to try to find out and doing the prescriptive method on your home. Now, the struggle that people have with using the prescriptive method is how stringent, how strict the requirements are. It can require you to spend a substantial amount of money more to build the same house. And then if you went with the performance method, which we're going to talk about in one of our other videos. And let's go back to the Form 402. And let's look at some of the things here that really get people. Okay. So right here is one of the biggest things. Air distribution system, air handler unit. Where is it located? It is not allowed in the attic. Okay. At all. The ductwork. If ducts are in unconditioned attics, they must be R8. R8 insulation in some areas is pretty much impossible to get. Not going to get it. You're going to fail. Because if I go in with R6 and I'm supposed to have R8, everything else in my house in the prescriptive method may be perfect. I will fail. Air leakage duct test. The air handler install. You must have, if the ductwork is not in conditioned space, you have to have a duct leakage test. All right. A lot of people don't do that. It's not that expensive to have a duct leakage test, but it also must be sealed within a certain number or value. Otherwise it fails. Here's another big one, especially in Florida, as to why. This is Florida. Heat's not a big thing until you get into northern Florida. Yeah, we have a couple cold days here and there. And, for some of you folks listening, a cold day to you is like negative 25. I mean, to us, a cold day here is like 40. But the system must be a heat pump system. Must be. Well, most people have no interest in installing a heat pump system, which, it's all preference. But if you don't have a heat pump system, the entire house fails. Water heater. If you want to go in with a much bigger water heater, 70, 80 gallon water heater, because you like to take those long showers, not going to pass. These are the minimum requirements. If you have anything greater than that, the added energy consumption of that device causes the house to fail. So, and the thing is it's each individual item on the prescriptive method. If any one of those items, it's going to fail. And I know I keep repeating myself, but I want to make sure that you understand that. In a lot of states, you have no option. Now, here's one that gets me. This is probably the one that really doesn't even concern us when it comes to it. Is in Florida, climate zone 1, climate zone 2, when you do a blower door test, which is mandatory on every new construction house. It's not mandatory on renovations. It's mandatory on new construction homes. But the amount of air infiltrating your home can be up to 7 air changes. And we talk about that on our podcast and one of our other podcast videos. You go to procalcsuniversity.com and you'll be able to listen to all of our podcasts. You can also go to procalcs.net/podcasts with an S, and you can also hear that too. We also offer some tools and helpful things, filters and things of that nature, temperature and humidity sensors. If you go to theprocalcsstore.com, you can go ahead and see some of that stuff, as well as one of the books I've wrote that kind of touches base on a lot of this stuff to help educate people. It's You Don't Know What You Don't Know HVAC, no nonsense guide to asking the right questions. So prescriptive method, very complex, very detailed, very stringent code that in Florida, most of your houses aren't going to pass because of how strict air handlers can't be in garages. They can't be in attics. They have to be in conditioned space. All ductwork has to be in conditioned space. And if it's not, it has to be duct leakage test. So a lot of complexity to it. But that is the prescriptive method. If you watch our next video, going to be coming up here soon, we're going to be talking about the performance method. And then the video after that, we're going to be talking about the different software that you need in order to perform the energy calculations. Look forward to seeing you folks in the next one. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave your comments below, or you can go ahead and email us at tom@procalcs.net, and we'll be more than happy to help answer those questions for you. Thank you from the team at ProCalcs and ProCalcs University. Have a blessed day.